Welcome to Perspectives in Mobile, the news podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Join us discussing the world of telecommunications, technology, and mobile innovations. From London, Dario Betti, MEF CEO.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspective, a podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum that looks at the people, the topics that are changing our market, and how different people might look at things differently. Today, we're going to look at the vision from John Wilkinson, the CEO of TMT ID, a company you might know as TMT Analysis right now, but just part of a new rebranding right now. Well, and you also might know John from his long career, and we're talking about 30 years in telecom. So plenty to talk about. Welcome, John, and thanks for joining us at Perspectives.
Hello, Dario. It's always a pleasure to be with the MEF.
Well, thank you, and we have plenty to talk about. And the first news, usually we have our question to start Perspectives, but I cannot ask. Recently, we are in April right now, and we're recording this, and you just announced a new brand. So forget TMT Analysis. It is now TMT ID. Why the change?
It's a big moment for us, and we're very proud we've gone green, which is our new colour. So we wanted to change. The TMT is obviously the acronym associated with our industry, telecoms, media and technology. And we didn't want to change that because people have become used to us and call us TMT. And so we wanted to keep that. ID, because essentially that's where the majority of our product focus and attention is around providing identity layer and fraud protection services on top of telecommunications and internet infrastructure. So pretty much everything the business does is around identity. And so it very much anchored us correctly in the right market. And from a sort of negative explanation perspective, TMT Analysis kind of made sense from a point of view of us looking at so much data and analyzing that data. But of course, that didn't come across quite as well in the name. And a lot of people thought we were actually industry analysts, like a financial analysis company like Enders or someone. And so some people were confused by the name as well. It's mainly moving and refocusing the business around identity, which is where the majority of the products are, but keeping that heritage of the TMT acronym.
Well, let's talk about those services. Let's talk about what you do then. Because if I see in your website, I've done my research, experts in mobile identity verify, authenticate, number validation, scoring, anti-fraud. I mean, that's all in there. It's a lot of things. But to the people out there, what are you helping to do? I mean, what is your big help in the mobile ecosystem?
So tons of challenges in the world and in the mobile space, and one of the ways we think that some of them can be overcome is around using and adding identity layer type products into the internet and the mobile ecosystem. So essentially what happened 20, 30 years ago when the internet was built is most of the identifiers were kind of quasi-related to your identity. So your phone number or your email address has a different layer of kind of proxy relativity to you actually who you are, but it's not a one-to-one identifier. And because of that, and because there's no real trust around who you're communicating with online, it's created a huge amount of problems and a huge amount of solutions. Things like two-factor authentication via SMS is a very good example where a bank or a credit card company is trying to prove and trying to get a sense of trust that the person they're interacting with is really the one they think it is. And so they do a two-factor check via the mobile network to see that their data matches the mobile networks and that the person's controlling the phone. So it's a very simple example around why identity is a problem. So some of the things we're doing to help tackle that is using new API infrastructure that the mobile networks have made available, essentially to access their CRM data. And that's a series of different kinds of protections. So things like SIM swap protections, which are checking against fraud to make sure that the service that is being provided to the person that they think it is. But also a set of actual kind of identity checks, so name and address checks, for instance. So if you're using, I don't know, a rideshare company or a flat rental company, it's very simple to make a check against a service like ours to see that the person renting the house and the renter, have the name and address that's related to the phone number that you're interacting with. And so by doing a very simple check, you can help protect that transaction and those two people. And the mobile network's data can be very, very critical in providing assurance to prevent crime and make everyone more comfortable with the trade that's taking place. So it's a whole series of different identity-based solutions using mobile and other data around identity and fraud.
Can I mention as well, because we at Perspective have been recently talking about age verification, the impact of social media and other things on young people, on adolescents, and I guess that is really topical right now. I mean, even changes in social media minimum age is happening. All of that right now.
Yeah, so it's a really massive emerging industry and market being tackled in lots of different ways technically, and is a super opportunity for us and the mobile networks. So we do a huge amount of age verification checks for things like gaming, gambling, adult services, and it's a really important development in the market. I think if we look back in time, in 20 years' time, and say, could a child just go on some of these websites without verifying who they are? We'll be kind of shocked about how stupid that was. That the internet's a very unpleasant, dangerous place if you know where to look. And so, yeah, age verification is a massive opportunity for us, and we're doing it in multiple markets, about 45 markets around the world, where we're using either mobile data or augmented other data on top of the mobile data. And that's to protect kids online and stop them having access to services that they shouldn't access, and doing that via a series of different infrastructures. But the API infrastructures to the mobile networks is a really important one, where it's either a date of birth match, so the customer takes the date of birth, we get the date of birth, and then we send it to the network, and the network verifies that it's the same and the user has the same name and date of birth as the account that they're seeing. Or in some circumstances, it can be a kind of threshold. So is this customer above 18? And what information do we have or can we gather that can prove that? And it's an enormous emerging market being driven mainly by regulation and law. American markets, state by state, are rolling out different age verification. And as a consequence, the really big players, the social media networks and the large payment companies, everyone is beginning to roll out age verification services in different ways, either using some kind of bio test, facial recognition, or using database solutions like ID cards or driver's licenses or whatever it may be. But mobile has a really important role to play there because it's ubiquitous, because it's on your person, and because everyone can understand how to use it, and quite often it is actually the device which is accessing the application. And so therefore it's a really logical place for the mobile networks to be able to provide a level of trust and assurance for their customers, and the websites in general.
And let's talk about for namesake, we are Perspectives. What's your perspective about this market? Because we talked about some of the need in the market. There was a clear demand for this. Some of the challenges as well. So where do you think these identity services, mobile identity services, are going? Is that something that is going to be seen in economic impact as well?
Yeah, I think it's going to have a pretty dramatic impact. If you think about how information is gathered and provided, in the sort of GDPR model, it's very important around user consent journeys and the delivery of these services via mobile networks. And it also takes mobile in a different direction. It's really a higher value service layer on top of connectivity. And that's really what the mobile networks have been challenged with in the last 20 years. And so how they can use this advantage they have around ubiquity and smartphones to make their data sets more applicable and the place to go for assurance online is a really big challenge for them. And it takes them into whole new market sectors of know your customer, know your business. Things like AML checks or fraud checks in general is a massive market. And of course, it's not always easy to move from one market to another. The nice thing about the mobile environment, and you guys at the MEF are a great example of that, is there's already an infrastructure in a kind of mobile services layer above the MNOs, which has been very successful around things like messaging and interconnect over many years. And so there's a sort of logical aggregation umbrella product providers that can take these services to market really kind of logically and well and quickly. If you think about the likes of, Twilio or Cinch, or, all those kind of large aggregator customers that you have, they're very obvious places to go as well for services like this. So yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity for the mobile networks to move in a higher value direction than selling bit pipes. And it's a really nice opportunity for the aggregators to provide aggregated and kind of umbrella services across the mobile ecosystem.
So let's talk about the future, but as in the TMD ID. I need to make sure that I give a right identity now. TMD ID, no analysis. But TMD ID is now changing a lot. It starts with a new branding. But what's coming up in its future? This seems to be a real dynamic area now. Things are moving pretty fast around here. What are you going to be in terms of the next move? What are you going to be doing?
Great. So, for us, it's about organic growth. So we're just trying to grow as quickly as we can in multiple markets around the world, and different types of data sets. Customers know us for mobile, but if you think about, who our customers are, so a credit agency or a credit card company or someone like that, what they tend to want is a high quality response to an age request, for instance. They don't necessarily care that response is derived from a mobile network. If it's derived from a utility bill, that might be equally important. So kind of we see ourselves migrating the business into multiple different data sets in different markets to augment and add value to the mobile data, especially when the mobile data has gaps, which unfortunately it does in quite a lot of markets. And so organic growth for us is big markets. So it's India, Nigeria, Indonesia, Brazil, these kind of markets where we see most growth, and that's where most attention is in the business. And then on the inorganic side, hopefully you saw we acquired a company called Phronesis about this time last year, which we've now integrated, is another provider of mobile intelligence services. And we're looking to add other companies like that over time in different markets, so we can increase the product width, increase the customer base, and just basically grow as quickly as possible to try and maximize the opportunity, which we think is really now.
So you're open for those mergers, acquisitions like Phronesis we just mentioned now. And can you tell us a bit more? That happened last year, if I'm not mistaken. Have you already integrated? Is there already part of the arsenal of products that you have?
Yeah. So it's pretty much completely integrated. We kept all the staff. We've integrated all the products, all the customers. In a sense, it wasn't too massive a lift because a lot of the products were kind of similar to ours already. But I have discovered the term technical debt in recent times, and just, the fact of having multiple products that need to be crunched together, multiple databases that need to be crunched together, API infrastructures that need to be merged, is a bigger job than I'd possibly anticipated. And so, it's the bigger things are, and the more moving parts, it's difficult to make sure you don't slow down the speed of product development and growth. But I think we've done a really good job of integrating Phronesis business, the Phronesis brand, the Phronesis customers. And so, we're looking forward to do more. They were very focused around the UK and France in particular, whereas, our business was a bit wider than that. And so it's given us a much better product set and penetration in those markets in particular, which has been really great.
So let's talk about those markets. As we touching on geography, you have just before mentioning how some of the big growth you are seeing is not necessarily in Europe or US, I should say. Why do you think that there is such a demand within Indonesia, India, and everything you also mentioned? Why is identity so critical there?
Well, it's critical everywhere. Just there's different ways of doing it in different markets. So if you look in, like, I don't know, Scandinavia, for instance, then it's kind of bank IDs. It has been an enormously successful initiative. And you couldn't really get a bank ID kind of product with the kind of coverage it would need in Indonesia or Nigeria or India or Pakistan, simply because the percentage of bank accounts versus the population is very low. And so mobile has a unique advantage of being ubiquitous in those markets versus almost anything else other than probably ID cards. And so mobile has a natural advantage in that regard. And then in very specific other areas, if you think of remittance, and mobile money, and remittance is obviously massive in those types of emerging markets. And what do you need to do to manage remittance well, or manage identity well in those markets? You need to know as much as you can about the customer. Is the device in the control of the customer? Have you seen it before? Is it a reliable customer? Do you need to run AML checks over it, etc.? And so, huge requirement on those markets to use mobile data probably faster and more aggressively than in Europe, where there's other solutions that are available as well. So we see those markets as really critical, both for fraud, for identity, and a variety of different products. But the European and US markets are moving pretty well as well. But obviously there's a sort of richer tapestry of different types of data that you can use to prove someone's identity and trust.
No, great. I'd like to go back again to something you've mentioned before. You introduced the concept of tech debt. And I should say in general, all of the great things that are happening across the world. This is an exciting part of the mobile ecosystem for sure. And we have seen how it was, right front and center at the last Mobile World Congress. And we've been covering the last 3 years, let's say, of a lot of talk about getting APIs, getting streamlined solutions. Where are we with that? The GSMA has launched its open gateways, and there's no alarm, supported by Camara and TMT Forum, etc. We ourselves are trying to spread the news. How do you see all of the things that are happening out there? Is it going to work? Is it helping? Is it hindering? Where are we with the standardization overall of these solutions from the mobile identity side?
Yeah, it's helping hugely. So we interconnect with mobile networks via API in multiple markets, probably more than anybody else. And it's really useful for us to be able to, when the mobile network says, "Oh yeah, but what about the legals and should the API do this and should it do that? You know, it's really, really useful for us to say, hey, well, look what did your GSMA say? Join the Kamara group. You know, see how it works in other markets. So it's an enormously useful benchmark and indicator of sort of activity and market movement by the big guys. So I think it's been hugely effective from that point of view. You know, like anything in mobile, it tends to be implemented differently in different places by different people and at different times. And on one hand, you could argue that's a shame. It'd be more logical if it was massively uniform. Probably wouldn't be such a business for TMT if it was massively uniform, which would be a problem because, you know, we have to do the integration, the normalization, and the sort of coordination, which is an important part of our business. But also, you know, countries are different, networks are different, customer bases are different. It's not surprising that technologies are different. It's not surprising that different networks have different requirements. And so, yeah, we're hugely supportive. It's been a really good learning curve, and we work with the networks as closely as we can whilst being a small company. So, you know, if a network tells us we're not going to be ready for a year, can you help us? We'll call them back in 12 months. So, you know, we can't fix the world, but we can certainly use and purchase and work with networks when they do have an API available. And we do that pretty much everywhere.
Let's talk about your history then, because TMT ID has been active. I would say, am I counting correctly? Is it 8 years you've been in the market?
It's certainly 7.
Certainly 7. So we come close to another birthday. Or
it's a 5-year plan. Dario, we're just we're going to have to start another 5-year plan reasonably soon.
Oh, here we go. So looking back at the last 5 years plan, I wanted to understand how you grow, how you've learned, and potentially even for some of your mistakes, you know, how things didn't exactly work out the way you expected and so on. But what did the last 7 years give back to you? You know, what is the fundamentals that you built with that?
Yeah, lots of interesting learning for sure. I think the technical debt point we talked about was really interesting because it's the sort of first business I've been involved with where pretty much everything is homegrown development. So it's our own technology, our own database infrastructure, our own platforms, and that is brilliant because it means you can design product how you want it. You can use the very latest technology and capability to get products to market. It does mean your entire business is sitting in the heads of 5 or 6 genius engineers. And so how that kind of over time as you grow migrates from those 5 or 6 people talking to one another and then doing things into a sort of platform and architecture and scalable version release, change control, technology process is a challenge for sure. You know, as you grow, you know, we're about 90 people now. You know, obviously when we started we were 3 or 4, and so how you kind of scale people is a real interesting challenge. And yeah, you know, just challenges everywhere. But the nice thing is, as you grow, you get better use cases. You know, bigger customers. You've overcome some of those really irritating first objections around, will you still be here? You know, why would I use this product? No one else is. Yeah, you know, the sort of usual type problems. But the problems just keep coming. And so it's constantly about thinking how to cope with the technical debt and migration of existing products, refocusing on new. I think the one other thing is it's very easy when you're small, which is what we did well, was just listen to customers and then do what they ask you. And that's a great way to scale, to start a business, and it worked very well for us. But after a while, when you've got quite a lot of customers and they're all telling you different things, you've actually got to take some decisions in absence of just listening to them. And so that's where it can get really tricky. And when you look at the identity kind of layers, there's I don't know, maybe 100 different factors and influence points we can use within an API. So how we pick those and make the right products from them and keep the messaging simple and the technology clean is very, very difficult. And so there's a big learning from just listening to your customers to actually trying to design what you think will sell. And that's been a tricky learning curve for us as well. And we've made tons of mistakes, no doubt. But yeah, it's fun. I'm glad we started the business. I wish I'd done it sooner.
Well, we are here 7 years later, and the next 5 years plans you have it, so plenty to keep you busy. But you mentioned customers, and you mentioned how your business has almost changed from doing what they were saying or were asking to guessing what they need. Kind of a next level.
Yes.
What about the other side of some of their equation? What about your competition? Who are they, and how would you define yourself and them?
Yeah, but I mean, if by competition you mean people who do similar things to us, then I look at really interesting, powerful businesses where we're kind of aspiring to be like, if you like. People like Twilio or Prove, Telesign, Vonage. All have a series of services around API infrastructures, around identity, using a lot of mobile data, and are very kind of focused on the space. I do think there's opportunities for smaller companies than them. One, there's just some benefits in being lean and fast and focused, which is really important. Some of the other things we've done which have worked quite well is we've never tried to be particularly American. We've not got a great kind of domestic US product, and I think it's always very tempting for companies like us to go and do that. And we've not done that, and so our focus on international data and big international markets has served us very well. And you've got to be a very, very big identity verification business, someone like a LexisNexis or someone that kind of scale, before you think, okay, how do I get access to Chile or Peruvian mobile data, right? You just don't do it yourself. And so therefore, we've created a nice market where those big identity verification companies and tech companies and fintechs can come to us, and then we can provide them the Bolivian data and the Chile data and the Peruvian data, because it's just too much of a heavy lift and they're too busy to do it themselves. And even a Twilio or a Vonage probably are so busy in their core markets that they may not focus on that too. So there's a few sort of niches which we've managed to exploit. And yeah, I think over time it's interesting because hopefully our competition is going to cease being people more directly in the mobile space and be actually more big data aggregation and service companies. And so, over time we see that moving, but certainly we're still very much focused on mobile, trying to get penetration in as many markets as possible, and have as much coverage, if not more, than those companies I just mentioned.
So twice you mentioned that you're looking at mobile as your roots, but you're expanding, in terms of input, in terms of potential applications, I guess, the companies and the different services that are being out there. So we will hope to keep you, nicely involved still with the mobile ecosystem, but we understand that your aspirations are way beyond that. Let's go back, as we like to do here at Perspectives, about trying to find out if there is, it's a serendipity or there is a path in things. If you build a perspective, if you build based on your experience, because you in your careers have been working, and I think potentially in similar moments with different things. When I look at you, and I'd love to ask more about your experience going back to 1994, I guess, 94, 97, and later. You were working in ISP, and one of a big ISP of the time, AT&T WorldNet, one of the first ISP. Eventually, you join Energies, and then later on Swisscom. So you are a product person at heart, but you also known how to evangelize product, but people don't even know that they necessarily need. 94, 97 ISP. The question is, what is it? Is there a parallel between what you're doing today, talking about identity as your next market, and effectively a powerful application that needs to be covered everywhere, just like the internet was at the time? Is there something you can reuse from that experience? Is there any relevance? There's not.
Yeah, no, I think it's all, I don't know if it's happenstance or choice, but I think working on new product areas has always been the most interesting thing for me. And so I think one, that new product areas, and then secondly, smaller companies rather than bigger ones. From my experience of bigger ones, which wasn't that bad necessarily, but just I think I'm more naturally a smaller company person. And so those two things certainly hold a lot of relevance. I mean, if I remember the time I spent, I was reasonably early in voice over IP, and the time I spent knocking on the big telecoms company's door, telling them that this was going to work, it was going to be a real product, and the amount of times I got thrown out and laughed at and insulted was pretty regular. And so I'm reasonably used to the exercise of trying to get hold of a different part of new technology within the telecoms world and applying it to a different market. That's very much what I've done back to my days at AT&T and the first sort of ISP rollouts in Europe.
And if you had somebody now in front of you and say, I want to start working in identity and mobile, what would be your advice to this person?
I would say do it. I think it's an enormously interesting space. I do think there's advantages in the migration of kind of tech and telecoms together, and so I think that's pivotal. My only advice would be work for companies that are reasonably fast moving and trying to do new things. When I've been involved in closing products, reducing things, migrating off existing stuff, doesn't mean it's not a challenging job and really interesting. I've just always found it more fascinating to try and work on new things to see if they're going to succeed or not. And then over time, you kind of get to look back and see where you were right and where you were wrong. And I would certainly suggest people get into tech. And the nice thing about technology now is actually if you're in it at the ground level in tech or engineering or product, then you've got enormously transferable skills to fintech or e-commerce or anywhere you like. The technologies are all kind of blurring, and so you give yourself an amazing opportunity as a career to get into multiple different markets. It's not like telecoms days of the past, where if you started working for AT&T, you were probably going to finish your career at BT or something. You can hop industries on the back of those technologies really easily now.
So it's a dynamic world. Lots of things are changing, and you can part of that change. You can change this market as well right now. So you heard it from John Wilkinson, the CEO of TMT Analysis, now TMT ID. This is a great time to look at a new market and create a new market for mobile identity. But as John says, eventually not just mobile identity, but identity in digital overall. So that's all the time we got right now. So it's time to say a big thank you to John. Thanks again for John Wilkinson to join us from TMT ID, and congratulations, well done on all of the new rebranding and all the new services that are coming next. Now, this is all for us from Perspective. Join us soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. Join us next as we explore telecoms, technology, and mobile innovations. Stay tuned, stay connected, and let's unlock the mobile potential together.